The envelope was thick official looking from the bank. It arrived on a Tuesday, a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where the biggest challenge was convincing my 7-year-old Leo that socks were a non-negotiable part of the school uniform, and keeping 15-month-old Maya from smearing avocado toast into the rug. I was juggling getting Leo ready, feeding Maya, while simultaneously trying to respond to urgent emails from my own demanding job in corporate finance. Life felt full busy, maybe a little chaotic, but blessedly normal. Perfect even in its own messy everyday way. I thought it was built on solid ground. I slid open the envelope with a hurried finger, expecting a statement, maybe an offer for a new credit card. The first few lines blurred together in my rush standard bank jargon. Then specific words jumped out sharp and terrifying, ripping through the mundane soundtrack of our morning notice of default. Commercial loan, property lien. My hands started to shake violently, making the paper rustle loudly in the sudden unnatural silence that had fallen around me, a silence broken only by Maya's soft cooing from her high chair. A commercial loan default. On my house. The house Michael and I had bought together, the place we were raising our children. The place I poured my salary into. I didn't own a business. I certainly hadn't taken out a commercial loan. I read faster, my eyes flying across the page, my heart hammering against my ribs. The amount made my blood run colder than a Boston winner's $750,000, $750,000. A loan secured by a lien on my home. My home where my children were eating breakfast, where I felt safe, where I thought my life was built on solid ground. And then I saw it. My name, Charlotte Gonzalez, listed as the borrower or co-borrower. And beneath it, on a scanned copy of a signature line, a signature. It looked like mine, almost exactly. The flourish on the C, the loop on the G. But something was off, something subtle. It wasn't mine. Panic, cold, and absolute seized me, squeezing the air from my lungs. This couldn't be real. This had to be a mistake. Identity theft. But the address was right. The name was right, and the signature, it was too close to be random theft. I stumbled out of the kitchen, away from the innocent sounds of my children, into the living room. My phone felt heavy and alien in my trembling hand. I dialed Michael's number, my fingers clumsy, fumbling the unlock code twice. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful, oblivious, coming from a world that clearly hadn't just imploded. "Hey, you," he said. "Everything okay? You sound breathless. Traffic already bad. Michael?" My voice was a shaky whisper I barely recognized as my own. "I just got something from the bank. A letter about a loan, a commercial loan, for $750,000 on the house." Silence on the other end. A long, heavy, deafening silence that stretched into an eternity. "Michael!" His voice, when it finally came, was different, tense, cautious, stripped of its earlier cheerfulness. "Okay, Charlotte, don't panic, just calm down, let me explain." "Calm down!" I shrieked, the fear giving way to a rush of frantic, desperate energy. "Calm down! My name is on a lien for $750,000 on our house, and you want me to calm down?" "What is this, Michael?" He sighed, a sound of pure exasperation, as if I were the one being unreasonable, as if I were the one causing the problem. It was a sound that felt like a second sharp betrayal after the paper in my hand. It's a business investment, Charlotte. An opportunity I've been working on. It needed significant capital to get off the ground." "A business investment? You mortgaged our family home for $750,000 for a secret business investment without telling me, without asking me," and then I focused on the signature again, the perfect, horrifying imitation. "You signed my name, Michael, on these papers. You forged my signature." Another pause. Longer this time. The silence crackled with his trapped guilt and rising panic. Then a reluctant, quiet admission devoid of real remorse, framed only by flimsy excuses. I had to, Charlotte. There wasn't time to explain everything. It was a fast-moving opportunity, and you would have worried. You wouldn't have understood the potential. You wouldn't have approved. Understood. My voice cracked, tears finally blurring my vision. Understood you committing fraud. Putting our home, our children's security, our entire future at risk for a business investment I know absolutely nothing about. How could you? He tried to explain to justify his actions with the same blind ambition that had driven him to this point. It's going to be big, Charlotte. This is my chance. My chance to finally build something huge, to make a real name for myself, to get out from under everything, under the pressure, under your success. The last words were almost a mumble, but I heard them. His insecurity weaponized into an act of destruction against the very life we shared. My success, the absurdity of it all was breathtaking. You're destroying our lives because you feel threatened by my success. I know. He snapped, his voice losing its defensive edge and rising in pure, desperate frustration. Do you think I wanted to? But I had to. I needed the capital, and it was the only way to get it fast. It's going to work. It has to. It will solve everything. His desperation was real, raw, ugly. But it didn't erase the icy shock of his betrayal, the sickening knowledge that he had forged my name, gambled with our lives, and done it all in secret, planned it behind my back. The casual way he had just admitted it, as if it were an unfortunate, necessary inconvenience, not a monstrous breach of trust, a potentially criminal act that threatened to undo years of my hard work and stability. I hung up the phone, my hand still trembling, clutching the damning envelope. The sound of Maya cooing from the kitchen felt miles away, a sound from a different innocent world. I looked at the thick papers in my hand, the forged signature staring back at me. 750 and a $1,000 on my house, forged signature. Michael. Just like that, the perfect life I thought I had, the life built on a foundation of trust and shared dreams, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I felt a cold dread wash over me, fear for my children, for their security, for everything. And beneath the fear, a hard, unwavering resolve began to form. He thinks he can just gamble with our lives. I whispered to the empty room the words of promise to myself. He thinks forging my name, mortgaging our home behind my back is just a detail. A wave of icy calm followed the initial shock and panic. The financial analyst in me, the one who dealt with numbers and risk and cold hard facts every day, took over. This wasn't just about a loan anymore. This was about a network of lies, a betrayal that ran deeper than I could possibly imagine. And it was time to expose every single layer, no matter how painful, no matter how ugly. No, I said, my voice firming the tremble gone. Not today, Michael. Not ever. You messed with the wrong signature. To understand how my life went from perfect to a complete catastrophe in one bank envelope, how the man I loved became the architect of my potential ruin, and why I decided I had to burn it all down to the ground to build it back up stronger. I have to go back to the man I thought I married, and the woman who helped him dismantle everything. The ghost who lived in my house without me knowing. Before that Tuesday morning, my life was on the surface exactly what I had always meticulously built towards. A beautiful, large home in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood of Boston. The kind you work your whole life for. 2 amazing, healthy kids, Leo and Maya, who were my absolute world. A successful, demanding career in corporate finance that I was passionate about. And Michael, my husband of 10 years. He was charming, handsome, charismatic, seemingly successful in his marketing career. He was, I thought, my partner, my rock, the man who completed the picture of the perfect life we were building together. I worked hard at my job, putting in long hours, rising through the ranks in a challenging, male-dominated industry. My career wasn't just a job. It was part of my identity, a source of pride, and a crucial component of our family's financial security. I genuinely believed in contributing, equally pooling our resources, building a shared future. I thought Michael felt the same. He often spoke about his own ambitions, his desire to climb the corporate ladder, to land that big promotion, to launch a successful project, to match or even exceed my professional success. I supported him wholeheartedly, celebrating his wins, listening patiently to his frustrations, boosting his confidence whenever he felt discouraged. I wanted him to shine. Looking back now with the chilling, almost unbearable clarity that only betrayal can bring, I see the cracks. I ignored the subtle signs I explained away with charitable excuses. Michael's ambition wasn't just healthy drive. It bordered on a desperate need for external validation. He often seemed restless, constantly comparing himself to my achievements, to the perceived successes of others in our social circle. He talked about needing a big win, a game changer that would solidify his status. He was charming, yes, but perhaps too charming too, focused on appearances, on making the right connections, saying the right things. Then there was Chloe. She entered our lives about a year or so before the envelope arrived, though I didn't know how deeply she had entered Michael's life until much later. Michael introduced her as a brilliant colleague, someone he was collaborating with intensely on a challenging high-stakes project at his firm. She was sleek, confident, effortlessly cool, with an air of knowing exactly how the world worked. I met her a few times at company social events Michael dragged me to, always with him by her side. They had an easy rapport, a professional synergy that Michael often praised, saying she was instrumental to his project's potential success. He started working late more often, citing intense project deadlines with Chloe. He traveled more for business trips, often mentioning Chloe would be there too. I didn't suspect anything romantic at first. I trusted Michael. We had a good marriage or so, I believed. He was affectionate, engaged with the kids when he was home. My intuition, dulled by comfort and trust, didn't scream danger. It just whispered busy. The pressure seemed to be building on Michael at work. He was gunning for a major promotion, a significant step up that, would he repeatedly stressed, finally secure our future, lift a burden. He became more stressed, more secretive about the specifics of his project, but always framed it around the promotion, the need to impress, the confidentiality agreements. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have possibly imagined, was that Michael's desperate need for a big win, fueled by his insecurity and exacerbated by the wrong influence, had led him down a dark criminal path. The project wasn't just about a promotion. It was about a nebulous business opportunity. He was pursuing one he believed would make him rich, quickly, finally giving him the validation he craved, perhaps even making him financially superior to me. This opportunity, whatever its true nature, required significant capital. Capital he couldn't get through legitimate means, not quickly enough, not without scrutiny. He needed a large sum swiftly, without questions, without involving me in a way that would allow me to object. Traditional banks required substantial collateral he couldn't provide on his own without involving our joint assets. But we had the house, our largest asset, which was in both our names. In his blind ambition, his escalating panic, and under what I now suspect was significant external influence, Michael made a monstrous, unforgivable decision. He wouldn't ask me for permission to use the house as collateral for his secret venture. He would simply forge my signature. He found a way to get the loan. A large commercial loan, $750,000, secured by mortgaging our house. I still don't fully understand how he managed it, how he bypassed the bank's standard procedures for verifying a co-owner's consent, how he made the forged signature look so convincing. Unless he had help. Professional help. Someone who knew the loopholes, the right people to talk to, the exact steps to take to push through a fraudulent loan application secured by a joint asset. And that's where the tangled threads of Michael's personal betrayal. His affair became inextricably linked with a deeper, more sinister financial fraud, orchestrated by the person he spent all those late nights and business trips with, Chloe. Looking back now, the ignored signs weren't whispers. They were screams I chose not to hear. Michael's phone always face down when he was home. His sudden protectiveness over his laptop, even the screen angle. The way he sometimes ended phone calls abruptly or switched tabs on his computer when I entered the room. his vague yet overly enthusiastic descriptions of his project, and Chloe's involvement, his constant nervous energy. I attributed it to the stress of his big project, his impending promotion. I wanted to believe in him. I wanted our life to be as perfect as it seemed. I was too trusting, too complacent. After receiving the bank letter, after Michael's chillingly casual admission over the phone, the trust I had in him in our life evaporated completely. It was replaced by a burning need for answers for justice and for self-preservation. Divorce was now a certainty, but it wouldn't solve the immediate terrifying problem of a $750,000 lien on my home, based on a forged signature. I had to understand the full scope of his deception and untangle the fraudulent knot he had tied around my life. I needed help, real help, not just emotional support, but someone with the technical expertise to find the truth hidden beneath the surface of Michael's carefully constructed digital life. I thought of Daniel Garcia. We'd gone to college together, shared a few classes in computer science before I found my calling in finance. He was brilliant, quiet, ethical, with an almost uncanny ability to navigate the digital world. He had become a highly respected expert in cybersecurity and digital forensics. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but his reputation for integrity and skill was well known. I called Daniel. Explaining everything felt surreal, recounting the perfect life, the bank letter, Michael's confession, the forged signature, the suspicion of Chloe's involvement. Daniel listened patiently, his voice calm, steady, and completely non-judgmental. He didn't express shock or outrage, just focused on the facts on what needed to be done. "Charlotte," he said after I finished pouring out the horrifying story, "what Michael did is not just a breach of trust, it's a serious felony, forgery, loan fraud, potentially more. We need to gather irrefutable digital evidence to prove he acted alone, or more likely with accomplices, and that your signature was forged without your knowledge or consent." Daniel guided me through the process. It was difficult, emotionally draining, and sometimes felt like I was violating a sacred boundary, delving into the private world of the man I had shared a bed with for 10 years. But it was necessary. Daniel, working remotely with me following his precise instructions, helped me navigate Michael's digital footprint. Accessing old emails he thought he had deleted, recovering messages from cloud backups, finding files on a seldom-used work tablet he hadn't properly wiped, overconfident in his cunning and my supposed ignorance. The data streamed in a horrifying picture, forming piece by piece. First, the undeniable confirmation of the affair, explicit messages between Michael and Chloe, planning secret weekends away, coordinating stories about working late, exchanging intimate photos and declarations. The kind of betrayal that cuts you to the core, turning your shared history into a painful lie. But then the deeper, more disturbing layer emerged. The true core of the lie that intertwined their personal and financial deception. Messages that weren't about romance at all. They were about money, lots of money. Discussions about needing capital for a major transaction. About leveraging assets, about needing a clean borrower with solid credit and valuable property. Messages specifically discussing our house, its value, its potential as collateral for a large commercial loan. Discussions about getting the paperwork through, handling the signature, making sure it looked legitimate on paper, who to talk to at the lender to smooth things over. The messages made it chillingly clear. Chloe wasn't just Michael's mistress and a willing accomplice in his scheme. She was the driving force, the architect behind the fraudulent loan. It was her idea to target our house as collateral. She had the knowledge, the connections, the ruthlessness to pull off a fraud of this scale. Messages indicated she had specific contacts at the lending institution, not a traditional bank, but a firm specializing in high-risk, fast-turnaround commercial loans, possibly one with less stringent verification processes. These contacts, perhaps compromised or simply unethical, could be persuaded to overlook irregularities like a missing or forged signature on a key document, especially when dealing with large sums and a seemingly legitimate application fronted by someone like Michael. Michael wasn't the mastermind. He was a desperate man, blinded by ambition and infatuation, manipulated by Chloe into participating in her scheme for capital. The business opportunity he talked about was likely something Chloe was involved in, using Michael and our house as a means to get the money she needed. Their relationship wasn't driven by genuine affection. It was a transactional criminal partnership, disguised perhaps even to Michael himself as a passionate affair. The investigation went deeper, following the money trail Daniel uncovered. The $750,000 loan wasn't transferred into a legitimate business account for Michael's supposed venture. It was moved swiftly through a series of complex layered transactions involving multiple shell companies and international accounts, eventually leading back to entities directly connected to Chloe's uncle Mr. Harrison, a seemingly respectable figure in the business world, but whose digital footprint hinted at extensive illicit financial activities. Mr. Harrison wasn't just Chloe's relative or employer. He was at the center of a network involved in something far more significant, far more illegal than just a shady loan. The money wasn't for a legitimate business venture at all. It was likely used for large-scale money laundering, funding illicit activities, or repaying massive dangerous debts to unseen parties. Michael's business opportunity was just a convenient front, a plausible story concocted by Chloe and Mr. Harrison to give the fraudulent loan a veneer of legitimacy, using Michael's clean record and access to valuable collateral to get the funds they needed for their purposes. Michael was a pawn, a readily manipulated tool in a much larger, much more dangerous game. The full realization was terrifying. My home, the place where my children slept soundly at night, was not just tied to my husband's infidelity and fraud. It was tied to a network of serious financial criminals involved in potentially dangerous activities. The potential fallout wasn't just losing the house. It was drawing unwanted, dangerous attention to myself and my children. The perfect life I thought I had wasn't just built on quicksand. It had been built directly over a hidden, festering world of greed, deception, and potential criminality. But the paralyzing fear hardened into unyielding resolve. I couldn't hide from this. I couldn't negotiate with people like this. Trying to cover it up or settle quietly might expose me and my children to future threats. I had to expose the truth fully publicly, not just to save my house and my financial future, but to sever my ties to this dangerous network forever and ensure the people who did this faced justice. Michael, Chloe, Mr. Harrison. They needed to face the consequences, not just for what they did to me personally, but for the reckless, dangerous risks they willingly took with my life and my children's safety for their own gain. I decided the truth had to come out in the most public way possible. A private confrontation wouldn't be enough to neutralize the threat or ensure accountability. This network operated in the shadows, relying on appearances and hidden influence. I needed to drag them into the unforgiving light, where their reputations, their most valuable assets in their world, could be utterly destroyed. The company's annual conference, a major industry event where Michael, Chloe, and Mr. Harrison would be present, surrounded by hundreds of colleagues, clients, competitors, and media, provided the perfect stage. I worked meticulously with Daniel, organizing and verifying the mountain of evidence he had uncovered. Emails, texts, bank records, property documents, even incorporating details about the lending institution they used, and Mr. Harrison's linked entities. I consulted with lawyers specializing in fraud and family law, focusing on how to present the evidence clearly, concisely, and legally, while ensuring my own safety and the security of my children during and after the confrontation. We devised a plan. I would present the facts, calmly letting the evidence speak for itself, making it undeniable. The night of the conference arrived. The hotel ballroom was vast, glittering, filled with hundreds of industry professionals, a tableau of power and influence. Michael was there, circulating smoothly through the crowd, looking polished and confident, playing the part of the successful executive. Chloe was nearby, sleek and smiling, her arm linked with Mr. Harrison's, the picture of professional success and family connection. They had no idea I was coming, not in this capacity, not with the truth in my hands. They probably assumed I was home licking my wounds. I waited for the right moment. During a lull in the program speeches, when many people were mingling, drinks in hand, engaged in conversation, I walked directly towards Michael and Chloe, who were standing together near the edge of the crowd, laughing easily. Mr. Harrison was a few feet away, deep in conversation with a group of important-looking attendees, but within earshot. They saw me approaching. Michael's confident smile faltered, replaced by a look of confusion, then apprehension. Chloe's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of annoyance, quickly masked by a polite questioning expression. "Charlotte," Michael said, his voice wary, stepping slightly in front of Chloe. "What are you doing here? I thought you were staying home." I ignored him. I walked closer, stopping just a few feet away. My voice was calm, steady, deliberate, but loud enough for those nearby to hear over the ambient noise. "I'm here, Michael," I said, looking directly at him, then shifting my gaze to Chloe. "To talk about the business investment, the one secured by our house, the one that seems to involve both of you." Michael's face went utterly pale. Chloe's composure cracked completely, her smile vanishing, her eyes widening in sudden, sharp fear. Harrison, sensing the shift in atmosphere, paused his conversation, his gaze fixed on us. "Charlotte, not here," Michael hissed, trying again to pull me aside, grabbing my arm. I pulled my arm away firmly. "Oh, it has to be here, Michael," I said, my voice gaining strength, cutting through the polite hum of conversation. Heads were starting to turn. People were noticing the tension. "Everyone needs to understand the kind of business you're involved in, the kind of people you do business with, the kind of foundation your supposed success is built on." I held up the bank notice, the one that had arrived that Tuesday morning. "This arrived last week. A notice of default on a commercial loan for $750,000 secured by my home, our home, a loan I knew absolutely nothing about." I looked directly at Michael, my gaze unwavering. "Because you forged my signature on the deed of trust to get it." A collective gasp went through the group of people immediately surrounding us, who had started listening intently. Forgery, fraud on his own house. The murmurs began spreading like wildfire. Michael tried desperately to bluster, to deny, to deflect. "That's not true. It was a misunderstanding." She agreed. "We discussed it. She's lying." I held up printed copies of the text messages and emails Daniel had found. Not just one or two, but a stack. "Did I, Michael, do these messages where you and Chloe discuss getting the signature handled, making sure Charlotte doesn't see the paperwork, and celebrating the paperwork going through, sound like agreement? Does this message from Chloe to you, saying just handle it, she doesn't need to know the details, focus on getting the house's collateral, sound like I was aware and agreed?" I then presented the bank records showing where the money went. And the money, the $750,000 borrowed against my house. It didn't go into a business account for your supposed venture, Michael. It went here. I showed the transaction records clear as day, into accounts linked to Ms. Chloe and ultimately to entities controlled by her uncle, Mr. Harrison. I looked directly at Chloe, who was now visibly trembling. "This wasn't Michael's solo project, was it, Chloe? You found his weakness, his ambition, his insecurity, and you used him. You planned this. You found a way to get our house, our family's security as collateral for your own scheme, didn't you? A scheme that has nothing to do with legitimate business and everything to do with where this money ultimately ended up." I gestured to the final transaction records leading deep into Mr. Harrison's complex network of companies. "Whatever Mr. Harrison is involved in, whatever he needed that money for you, and Michael dragged me and, by extension, my children into it by using my home and forging my name." Chloe was speechless, her face white as a sheet, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and dawning fury. Mr. Harrison, who had moved closer, his face thunderous, suddenly looked ashen. He understood the implication. His network, his activities were being publicly linked to fraud, forgery, and the potential exposure of whatever illicit purpose the money was truly for. Michael was shouting now, desperate panic denials, hurling accusations against me, against Daniel, against anyone but himself. But the evidence I held was undeniable, concrete. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, turning into shocked exclamations, horrified whispers. People were pulling out their phones not to record speeches, but to capture the live, brutal destruction of reputations. The air crackled with the swift, brutal downfall of three people who had built their lives on lies and deception. Mr. Harrison, regaining a sliver of his composure, grabbed Chloe's arm, speaking to her in urgent low tones, trying to pull her away from the unfolding disaster. But it was too late. The damage was irreversible. Michael's career, Chloe's carefully constructed image of success and competence, Mr. Harrison's reputation in the industry, all lay in ruins on the elegant ballroom floor. They were exposed. The perfect life I had thought I had was gone, yes, but so was the intricate, dangerous network of lies and betrayal that had threatened to destroy me and my children. The aftermath was chaotic, painful, and consumed my life for months. The news of the conference confrontation, the evidence of forgery fraud, and the links to Chloe and Mr. Harrison's network spread like wildfire through the industry and beyond. Michael faced immediate suspension and termination from his company. Legal action from the bank followed swiftly, not against me, but against Michael, Chloe, and the entities involved. Investigations by the authorities into Mr. Harrison's network began triggered by the public exposure. Michael, Chloe, and Mr. Harrison had to face the legal and potentially criminal consequences of their actions. Forgery, loan fraud, and whatever deeper financial crimes the money trail led to. They paid a heavy price for their greed and ruthlessness. My first priority and my constant focus was securing my children's future and untangling myself completely from the financial mess Michael had created. With the undeniable evidence of forgery and fraud that Daniel had helped me compile, my lawyers worked swiftly and relentlessly with the bank and the authorities. It was a stressful, complex legal battle filled with depositions and paperwork, but ultimately, I was unequivocally proven to be a victim of fraud. The $750,000 loan and the fraudulent lien on my house were invalidated. Our home was safe. I filed for divorce immediately. There was no saving the marriage, no rebuilding trust. It was a messy, emotionally draining process, but necessary. Michael, stripped of his bravado and his fraudulent ambitions, was left to face the legal and financial ruin he had brought upon himself. He lost everything: his career, his reputation, and eventually the ability to deny the consequences of his choices. I didn't seek retribution beyond ensuring justice was served, and that he could never financially endanger me or our children again. I sold the big, beautiful house soon after. It held too many ghosts, too many painful memories of a life that wasn't real. With the proceeds after paying off the original legitimate mortgage, I had enough left to buy a smaller, cozier place in a different neighborhood. It wasn't the grand symbol of perfect success the old house was, but it was mine, safe, untainted by lies or betrayal. A true home for me and my children, a place to build new, honest memories. Rebuilding our lives wasn't easy. I was a single mother dealing with the emotional fallout of the betrayal and the stress of the legal battles while trying to maintain stability for my kids and excel in my demanding career. But it was real. The quiet moments with Leo and Maya reading bedtime stories, helping with homework, listening to their laughter were filled with genuine love and connection, not overshadowed by unspoken lies or a looming sense of dread. My career, instead of being derailed by the scandal, was unexpectedly propelled forward. My strength, my honesty, my intelligence, and composure in uncovering the truth and standing up for myself in such a public way resonated deeply with people in my industry. My company recognized my resilience, my ethical core, and my strategic thinking under immense pressure. I wasn't just good at finance and systems. I was a force to be reckoned with. A significant promotion followed opening new doors and providing the financial security my children and I desperately needed to start over. Opportunities arose from unexpected places, from people who had witnessed the conference or heard the full story, who admired my courage. And Daniel Garcia, remained a constant, unwavering presence throughout the ordeal. He didn't just help me with the technology, he was a friend, a confidant, a source of quiet strength and calm reason amidst the storm. He celebrated the small victories with me, listened patiently during the tough days, and offered support without expectation. He met Leo and Maya during one of our calls, and his easygoing nature and genuine kindness immediately won them over. He became a part of our lives naturally, effortlessly, without pressure or pretense. He wasn't a replacement for what was lost, but an addition to something new and beautiful we were building. Our relationship developed organically, based on mutual respect, trust, and shared values, the solid foundations that Michael had so carelessly discarded. Our life now isn't the perfect picture I once thought I had. It's simpler in some ways, more complex in others. There are still challenges the echoes of the past sometimes surface, but it is also filled with profound joy, security, and genuine connection. The scars from the betrayal remain a permanent reminder of how fragile trust can be, how easily appearances can deceive, and how quickly everything can change. But they don't define me. They are part of the story of how I learned to stand on my own to fight for what matters and to build a life based on truth, authenticity, and the unwavering love of the people who truly see and value me. I look at Leo and Maya thriving happy, safe in our new home. I look at Daniel, his steady presence, a source of comfort and strength, a reminder that real trust is possible. I look at my own reflection, seeing a woman who survived a storm she didn't see coming, who faced down betrayal and criminality, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more at peace than she ever was in the gilded cage of her seemingly perfect past. The ghosts are gone, the house is safe, and the future built on solid ground this time. Piece by piece, truth by truth is ours. So after Charlotte lost her seemingly perfect life but saved her home and built a new one based on truth and resilience, when faced with such deep and multi-layered betrayal from people you trusted, is uncovering the whole truth always the best path, even if it means exposing yourself to danger? And how do you learn to build authentic trust in new relationships after experiencing such a profound breach of faith from someone you loved?